In this video, I'm going to talk about how I record my Linux videos. And I do so in a virtual machine, and I do that one because I'm running a Mac and I don't feel like rebooting into Linux, but also because of the screen recorder. For this video, I'm using a very basic screen recorder, one that comes with the Mac. It's just QuickTime, and you could set it to record the whole screen, which is what I'm doing, or you could do part of a screen. You can tell it to turn on and off clicks. Right here, you can see I'm using clicks. That's similar to the type of recorders you have on Linux, but I prefer to be able to do more. Some of that I can do in Linux, some of it I can't. What this type screen recorder lacks is keeping track of the OS and the GPU metadata. That means with the mouse pointer, I can't turn on and off showing the clicks. I can't change the size. I can't change the image. I can't on this show keystrokes. There are some tools that would allow me to do it in real time, show the keystrokes, but I can't decide that after the fact in post-production. I can't show window positions, which, well, maybe we'll show that at some point during this video. This is not scripted, and I'm just sort of going to go through. I know I want to show a few different things, and we'll go with that. First thing, though, how do I run Linux? I do so in a virtual machine. Before I even start these, I'm going to go ahead. I can resume it here, or just click on it. I can manage snapshots, or I can configure it. Now, some of these things I cannot configure while it's running, but I can tell it to back up or not, different types of backups. I can tell with this startup and shutdown, ask me what to do, and well, this one's not going to let me because it's running, so let's just look at my Windows 10 here. I will say configure, and if we go to that same option, I could say suspend, shut down, force to stop, or ask me what to do. Well, I could close that. Going back to the Mint one, optimization, I could set settings there. Sharing, I could have it be custom folders. In this case, I have it where it's just my download folder, which is down here on my dock. So I could get data back and forth real easily. I think I could also just drag and drop it back and forth. Applications, do I want it to share applications with the Mac? I don't. Full screen, I just use the standard macOS full screen stuff. Web and email, a lot of this, all sorts of different options. I could set how much hardware, how the hardware settings are, graphics, how much I've put into it, not much. And so sometimes Linux for me could be a little slow. One, it's a virtual machine. Two, I don't have a whole lot of hardware dedicated to it. I have mouse and keyboard, all sorts of other things, and there's more things I can add. These are just the standard. I could set up CDs and DVDs, and can set up different security if I wanted to set it so that it had to be in full screen mode, and somebody was using this just like a Linux machine. So let's go ahead and open that. Now, this should open up a little bit faster because it's not having to launch the whole machine, but it still takes a moment. You are now offline. It's going to go back and forth having to figure out what it's connected to. I showed in another video how I can resize this and move it. And I have a script right here, service, centered, and it sets it to be centered, which will make it easier for my recording. I didn't think about when I was showing that before. I also have this program right here called Breathe that has saved states. And notice in the saved states here, I could have all sorts of hotkeys and I can move windows around. So just to show some of those, boom, boom, boom. I can move it wherever I want. I could also, boom, set it to be this size right here. So let's go ahead and take a look at Breeze. I have saved states. Notice saved states full screen is not listed there. If I just click on my Finder, I look at Breeze, and I go to Save States, full screen, is Command Option, or really Control Option, up arrow. Okay, but what I've done is I can set in a specific program, have a save state for Parallels Desktop. I use that same hotkey that I would usually go to full screen, which is not really, it's not the full screen that Apple calls full screen. Let's go ahead, I'm going to minimize this, and I'll create a new folder. By full screen, I mean this right here. It's not really full screen on a Mac. That's full screen. So maybe I could find a different term for it, maximizing. And I could go ahead and set this to be the same thing, move around wherever I want. I actually have all sorts of different ones. I'll sometimes want that, sometimes want that, sometimes want that. Right now I'll set it to be this, maybe shrink it down to right here, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And we can go back to Mint Cinnamon. Clicking there will reopen it, or I could have clicked it in the dock. Let's see. I also wanted to go ahead and open up Mint KDE, and then I don't even need this window again. Anyway, so I have two different ways, at least two different ways of getting into the same size. I don't know why it would want that. I am going to go ahead and put in my not particularly secure password into this. So there we go. For these, I use a very basic password. I don't know why it's installing software. Maybe there was something scheduled, so that might slow us down a little bit here. But there we go. I could also get to the configurations right here. So I could send keyboard controls if I wanted to, for something special. I could also type those in. Doesn't really help much. Set what USB devices I want to use. I can set what network. Oh, this isn't network. I could set what CD image. I could set network. Sorry, my mind was already onto there. Thinking in terms of, I usually just do a shared network. No big deal. I can set up sound, input and output devices. I can, that right there is showing disk activity. So if I go ahead and just create a new folder even, there should be a little blip of disk activity. There we go, a little blip of disk activity when I create that folder. Boom. There we go. And I can go and close this. And I probably have to go into, I don't remember where it is. Show desktop? Nope, that's not it. That's what I wanted to do initially. That was not it. Folder view settings. Folder view. Create new folder. It's not showing. Let me hit F5. Interesting. I don't know why that is not working. Desktop, apply. Let's go back to folder view. And it just disappeared. Well, that's interesting. Folder view, apply. Well, I have no idea what is going on with that. I am just going to do this, and I'm going to say restart. KDE does some odd things, especially when you resize windows a lot, which I've been doing. And so I'm going to guess that that's it. It could also be drivers from my virtual machine. One of the things the drivers allows me to do is, see, I have the KDE, I have the Linux mouse here, the mouse pointer. I move out to here, it becomes the regular Mac one. And so it goes back and forth. And as I go to a different distro, it has that mouse, just jump back and forth. I don't have to hold down any keys to escape it. So that's kind of nice. That's one of the things the mouse driver does. Also, the other is that ability to resize. Cinnamon does a lot better with my resizing. KDE often does not like resizing, and even being put into suspension, for whatever reason, that confuses it. So I'm guessing it's more a KDE issue, but again, I don't know. I will admit, don't know that. I just know it's an issue. I relaunch it and it's okay. I will resize this. This one should work fine. And again, I usually leave that closed. I could get back to those configurations, more of them right there. So it makes it real easy. Makes it real easy to do this. Let's go to KDE, which should be restarting. So those are the basic configurations and the basic setups that I use just to have the virtual machine up and running. Next thing I want to show is, how do I record this? Well, I don't record it generally with QuickTime. I use another program called ScreenFlow. And let's go ahead. Well, that could be going in the background. Now it looks like it came up anyway. But this is what I would do to record it. I would go ahead to ScreenFlow. And actually, before I start recording, let's look at how I can configure the recording here. This has all sorts of settings. I've talked about ScreenFlow in the past and some of the things it can do. It can record my desktop. In this case, I'm on an iMac. I also do have another monitor hooked up to it, so I could tell it to record the other monitor. I don't have an iOS device plugged in right now, but if I did, I could capture both the audio and the video from the iOS device, from an iPhone or an iPad, or I have an iPod. I can go ahead and plug those in. If I had plugged in multiple ones, I can go ahead and pick, I think it's just one at a time, but I could record those. I could record video from a camera. The Mac has a built-in camera, it would allow me to use that. I can pick, of course, input, record computer audio. I could choose to do that or not. And then there's this right here, timing stuff, record desktop frame rate, automatic, which I think is usually 30 frames per second, but if it needs to drop down, maybe it does, I don't know. To even 1 frames per second, make it sort of a slower, it would be choppier, but I just leave that at automatic. I can record in a loop for 30 minutes, continually recording what my desktop is doing. I played with that some. That way if something happens, I'm like, oh, what was that? I could stop it and watch the recording again. Found I didn't really use it, wasn't really worth it, so I stopped it. I don't do that anymore. Or I could set a recording, just record for 10 minutes. Maybe I'm walking away from the screen and I want to record for 10 minutes, but I don't want to have it just going and going. I can do that. I've used that in testing, but that's it. I can also, generally you would record the whole screen. You can pick to record just a section of the screen. And you can even come down here and pick this right here. The window that we're going to be working with is 1600 by 900. So I could set that up to be 1600 by 900. And I could try to move this and be pixel perfect. That looks pretty darn good. But if I kept doing it just that way, chances are I would occasionally be a pixel off. And I don't know, maybe I'm being picky, but that would bother me. So I don't do it that way either. The other option I have, and I'll show you what I do so I can get just to show just Linux in just a moment. I also have my new document here. I could set up a new document to be screen dimensions or any common size there, or set my own width, and that's just starting it without a recording, so I could bring in my own video, audio, GIFs, whatever I want to bring in, PNGs, whatever other media, and work on the recording in the end, or work on the video. But here, I'm just going to go ahead and hit record. This is what I normally do. I just come here, hit the red button. Actually, I don't even have to do that. I would just go ahead and this right here and say record. Right now it says stop recording. Oh, the other thing I often would do before I even record is I don't necessarily want people to see my desktop icons. It has a very nifty little trick to say hide desktop icons, and they're gone. Now it's put something over it so I don't have all of my options for the Finder. So I'll show the desktop icons. It doesn't really matter. Let's go ahead and look at what we would do for recording Linux. So here I have my Linux screen right here. So I've set things up. Well, I guess one of the other things I could set up is I could go into, not the services here, where I only have those two, but each program has different services set to work with it. So in my Finder, I can, if I want to, I can show or not show what programs are running right now. I'm choosing not to show. I could click that and it would show them. Or I can hide the dock in the menu. The dock is down here. I could turn hiding on and off. That's real easy. But there's no easy way of turning that menu on and off. You can through the preferences, but there's no just click and do it. So I'm going to go ahead and use Finder, Services, Toggle, Menu, and Dock. And this is some UI scripting, at least part of it is, which means it's a little slower, but not too bad. Boom. It's gone. The dock and the menu are gone. I can hide my desktop icons, and then I'd have a very clean screen. And that also sometimes is just nice, so it's not distractions for me. But I'll come back up to here, Finder, and toggle those back on. No reason not to, and boom, pretty fast. So there we go. That works right there. Actually, as we're looking at those, I am going to might as well. This is one that created for somebody else. I have a hotkey to just hide cinnamon, hide mint cinnamon, and actually it hides all of Parallels. This is another script. I don't even need it, but I was working on this for someone else. I could say create new folders. That's if I wanted to create some arbitrary number of folders and have it be folder 1, folder 2, folder 3, up to a folder 100, whatever. So I go and I start it. How many folders do I want? Really, it should probably say how many folders do you want. It's not a well-written dialogue, but that's what they had. They did a similar thing in Linux, and so I'll say 101. Why not? Click OK. What prefix do I want it to have? ABC. And I'll put a space just so that there's a space between the name and the number. Click OK. And there we go. We have, if we scroll down, ABC up to 100. So there we go. More scripting things right there that you can do. Let's go back to Parallels. Okay, so I finally have my desktop set up the way I want it to be set up. And now I want to show whatever it is I want to show. So I want to show, I create a new folder. I want to create another new folder. I want to create another new folder, whatever I'm doing. I want to open Firefox. And so here we go. Firefox is being a little bit slow to open. But again, this is on a virtual machine, not a whole lot of resources. Maybe I want to open up LibreOffice. There we go. That wasn't so bad. And I do whatever I want to do with those, and I close them. Okay, so now I've shown whatever I want to show with Linux. Let's delete these. And I could say move to trash. I've shown what I want to show in Linux, and I want to come back and be able to work with this video. So how would I do that? I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Stop record. And it's going to go ahead, open up ScreenFlow, and it's going to have all of this set up. And here's my sound right there. Let's go ahead and say under View, Scrub Live Audio. I want to turn that off. I'll show you why. If not, you hear the live audio. Well, we don't want that. So I'm going to say Scrub Live Audio and turn that off. We won't hear it. When we play it, we hear that. That was my voice again, but from the recording, of course. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at what does ScreenFlow do for me here. So first, I could go over. Now, in general, I wouldn't have all of this preamble and then just a few seconds of recording. So here I am looking at Linux. I'm going to go to Document Settings and set this to be the size I want, 1600, 900. That's custom. Can I save that? I don't think I can. Might be nice if I could save that. Whatever, I can't. I have to type in the numbers each time. And boom. This is grayed out. I can still see it a little bit. I don't want to be able to see it. One, because it's a distraction. Two, because I could accidentally move stuff. Whoops, I've moved it. I'm going to hit Apple Z to undo that. And the other, let's just go ahead. I'm going to break that in half. If I have a transition, and right there it's just a fade, but maybe I want an inner cube, you will see the rest of my screen as it's going through. At least you risk seeing it. Let's do outer cube. Let's do cube. Well, it doesn't. I expected it to show this right here. Interesting. They may have actually fixed that. That's one of the things I've reported to them that I would prefer not to have. They've updated it recently, so that's a good update. Well, just out of habit, and so that I can't accidentally move it, I do still hold down the Control key. It takes just a few seconds. I go to each of these sides, and I crop this whole thing down. With this right here, I don't really want that second piece, and this is really the whole thing. I'll just stretch it out again, and we have the whole thing. Now, when I'm recording this, I can go through and decide in post-production. Right now, in post-production, when I'm still producing one video, but I've stopped ScreenFlow, I could decide right here, not just to change video properties, which maybe we can look at, but change mouse properties. That's usually one of the first things I do. Oh, let's go ahead. Just go ahead, because it's not the same clip. It was the other clip that I broke those down for, that I trimmed this. There we go. Okay, using mouse wheel to scroll in and out there. I can go ahead and click on my video clip right there and decide, do I want to show the mouse pointer or not? Notice it was down here. There, not there. It comes and goes. Well, that's a little hard to see, so I could set it to be larger. Can I set it to be 1000%? Boom, now it's huge. Well, it gets a little blurry at that point, but there, I mean, you couldn't miss it. But that's kind of silly. I mean, you could. Maybe there are times that would be useful to do that much. I usually actually do 50%. Now, that makes it so small you can't see. Oops, 50. Let's go ahead. 50%. That makes it so small you can't see, but I go into, I choose an image, or I have an image that's larger than most mouse pointers, and there it is. Now, you can see that mouse pointer really easily. Whatever I'm doing, you can see very easily. It's a mouse pointer that shows. Now, what it doesn't show, if we go back and we use the default mouse pointer, and let's go ahead and make it really large so we can see that. Right here, it's the regular pointer. If I go forward and we click on something, let's see, you don't see it changing. It always stays just that one mouse pointer. It won't become the I-beam, things like that. So here it is at the I-beam. It loses the image. That's okay. I could just go and reset it. Would be nice if it kept it, but it keeps that image no matter what the real mouse is. But it's really just for pointing people out to where things are. I could decide to have sound on click or not. I could have a click effect. Let's say invert. And let's see. There we go. You could see right there. And I could use my mouse to go back and forth. Right there when I click, it's inverted. I could also do radar. And so as I click, it's just right there. It's showing where I clicked. I wish really that they had more options. As much as I think this is a great feature, I wish I could have right and left clicks be different. I have more than 2 mouse buttons on my mouse. It might be nice to have a middle click. They're not going to have all 8 clicks that I have on mine. Most of those are just sending keystrokes, which I could show keystrokes. I could show all keys, show only modifier keys, show the height and width of where I want them, attached to the clip or attached to my canvas there. I can change the font, all sorts of things that I can do with those. And it doesn't have to be for the entire clip here. I can, let's see, do I have any keystrokes? I didn't really do many. I could turn those on and off as I wish. I had some keystrokes here. So it should show keystrokes as I type. There we go. Well, if I wanted to turn that off, I could add an action. Let's zoom in on there. I could add an action. I would usually zoom in so I could see better and turn it on and off there. So here, keystrokes show. Here, after it, they don't. You can see up here, it'll show you that. And so if I move this here, keystrokes are showing, but now, after here, they're not. Even as I'm typing. Now, if I were to move this afterward, it would show those keystrokes. So I could turn keystrokes on and off as I wish, and I could do that in post-production. That's a very powerful feature. So that helps me a lot with my recordings, and that works within Linux itself. I'm going to go ahead and hit my middle mouse button. I'm going to hit my middle mouse button and get my timeline so I can see all of it. When we get back to the Linux side, that mouse is probably the main thing that I use with it. I can also do those transitions, which are kind of nice. So if I want to snip something, things like that. But that you can do in any video editor. Turning the mouse on and off, there is no way to do that unless you have that OS and GPU metadata. Unless the computer knows, unless the program knows when that mouse is doing its thing, so you could replace it and do things like that. But there's more I can do. Now, I can't do it within the Linux virtual machine there, but I can do it here. Here I'm having different windows be open. What if I wanted to show these windows and I wanted to highlight them? I can come over to, not a callout, not an annotation, where is it? It is a callout. I just use callouts for different things. And I can set up a callout right here. Usually I set the callout to be freehand, meaning, let me draw it. Set something up for right there. It's right now set to be zoomed up, and I could set the opacity, or I could blur, or I could blur the background, but that's not what I want to use the callout for here. So I am going to go ahead and say I want the foreground window to be highlighted. And I gotta have it zoomed up also, so that's just the foreground window. Let's not have it be zoomed up, at least for right now. I could set the opacity of how much the background could even be seen. I could set a border on it, make a bigger border, make a smaller border. Let's make that be 2 pixels, or an outline, I should say. I could also make the border of what I want to be zoomed up, so let's go ahead, set that to be 4 pixels again. I think that was actually, whatever it was, doesn't matter. And now, as I go forward, anywhere there's this callout, let's go ahead and stretch it out. Anywhere there is that callout, Linux, it's not going to show me the front window very well. But when I go to other things, look at this. It's showing that front window. Let's go have it zoom up. I could have it zoom in and show those front windows really, really well. Let's go ahead. There we go. So here it is, where I have the front windows. Notice this is sort of grayed out. I can have it more grayed out. When we get to that front window, boom. Actually, it's still showing this is the front window on top of it. I'll admit that's a little odd. Usually it would just have the one item be the front window, but there we go. Everything else is grayed out, and of course, I don't have to have a border at all. I don't have to have an outline at all. So I'm going to say 0 there. I can turn those on and off. I could put a shadow on it if I want and make the shadow bigger or smaller. Change the feathering and the rounding on it. All sorts of things. I could even have it build in and build out so it fades in and out. But this is real nice, even if you don't have it zoomed in. So you're just highlighting what window you're working with. Let's go all the way back to the beginning on that. Every window I'm working with outside of Linux should show. Well, I guess it's just it. Let's see. Any other on the Mac itself? Here it won't show. That unfortunately doesn't carry over. Yeah, so that's not going to show. But when I'm working with the Mac, if I'm doing recording, that's a nice feature to have. And again, if you don't have that OS and GPU metadata, you cannot do that. So that's one of the reasons I like this editor and this program, even though in Linux, I can't use all of the features. While I'm looking at the features of it, might as well, and then we'll go ahead and end this. I'm sure this is getting rather lengthy. Video, there's all sorts of things I can do with the video. I could scale it to shrink it down or make it bigger. I can move it around. Let's go and set this back to 100%. I can change the position. I could change the rotation. I like how it sometimes does this 0, -0. Well, there is no -0. I could change the rotation this way. I could change the rotation this way, the X, the Y, and the Z rotation. Let's put those back to 0. And for doing the Z rotation, I could just pick up this handle. That's the most common. Just pick up the handle and do it. And I could just click this and move it around if I want to. I could change the opacity if I have multiple layers. I can crop it. In this case, it's already set to be cropped. And notice it's nice and centered, exactly where I want it to be on the window, because that's what I had my script do. And so I know exactly how many to crop it to. And we automated that. You saw how I did that. I could have reflection. I could have shadows. I could have color controls on this. Change the saturation if I wanted to. I usually leave these things alone. For my work, I don't really need that. Change brightness, contrast, even a bunch of video filters. If I wanted to have a distortion effect, why I would want this here, I don't know. But I could have a distortion effect and change that where I want it to be. Change the distortion effect. Let's go ahead and put this at 300. 300 just to get it onto my canvas. Here's a bug in it. I've sent this in. Hopefully they'll fix it at one point. I could drag it off the canvas, but once I do that, I cannot grab it again. And it's usually not an issue unless I have a video action where I want this to move. If I wanted this to move from one side to the other of the screen, say like this, it starts over here, and then I have an action, and now I want it to change. Well, I can't just grab that and move it, so I have to go ahead and make sure it's on my canvas. Bit of a pain. And then, boom, I can move it over here. Now when I play that, we'll have the sound coming from the other one. I can mute that sound, but we'll have it play through there. Weird, warpy view to it. Again, why would I want to do that? Generally, I don't, but easy enough to do. And all sorts of different video filters. And actually, for some of the fun stuff I've done, not just screen recordings, I've used these. Bump distortion. There's a bunch of these, and blurring styles and all sorts of things. The blur is actually sometimes useful. If I want to blur something out, there's a couple of ways I can blur it out. One is to copy this right here. I'm going to copy this whole track right here and go back to the beginning. And I'm going to hit Command V. I hit Command C to copy it. I hit Command V to paste it. And now I have that video track on there twice. And let's just move the audio to the bottom. Not going to hurt anything. Oops. There we go. And I can then, if I wanted to blur something out, let's go and drag this down. Say I wanted to blur out that menu right there. I could say, well, where does that menu begin? Right here. So I'm going to hit T to break that apart. And where does the menu end? I could use it right there. I'll hit another T, click on the clip, hit T, and then I can go through. This clip now is going to be everything on the screen, but just for this, and I could then go ahead and resize it down, resize, again holding down that control, And now I have a nice rectangle right here that I should be able to go into and say blur. This is actually not usually the way I blur stuff, but that would work just fine. Notice the mouse pointer above it does not blur, it just blurs the video itself. So I could blur things that way. This actually would give me a lot of control. Maybe it's not a bad way of doing it, but it's not the way I normally do it. So how do I do it? Let's go ahead. I could just get rid of this whole track, pick it up and drag it off. Away it goes. I go back to my annotations or my callouts, and I would say, well, let's get this. I'm not going to worry about doing it exact here. It's just for a demo. But I will go ahead, click on my video, and say action. And I want it to be freehand. And I would just highlight this section. It does have its quirks, that square up there, but there we go. Oh, why is it there? Because it's zoomed up 150%. I actually don't want that. I'm going to go with mouse cursor and everything else set to 0. I'll show you why in just a second. 0. And I was playing around earlier for something else. Make settings default for new callouts. So now that'll be my new settings for callouts. I'll show you what I mean. I'll hit action, and there we have it. I'll do now freehand. I could change it easily enough. And it still must be set for 150. Nope, still has that weird square. Can't say I really know why, but I'm just going to go with that. Doesn't hurt anything. And then I can, for the duration of that callout, have that area be blurred. So that's my normal way of doing it. It does give me the option to draw multiple areas. So if I wanted more areas to be blurred, it doesn't have to be a rectangle. But I actually kind of like the other method. I might end up using that. I don't know. Okay, what else? Let's just go ahead through these. Video. Let's go ahead. I could change the scale, change that. We've looked at those. The sound, I can mute the audio. Let's go down here and mute it. That way when I play, no sound. Or I could smooth volume levels. Takes just a little while. In older versions of ScreenFlow, this took forever to redraw. I'm very happy they fixed that. I can remove background noises. And there we go. Pretty fast to redraw now. I could add an effect. I usually don't do these, but I could add an effect if I wanted to. And these are pretty simple effects, but they're things that you would use mostly for screencasting. If I had it left and right and I had audio mixing, I could do that as well. Pretty basic stuff there, but it does work well. Audio filters, they also have all sorts of things here. All of the stuff that's built into Apple, which I could add. Barely have played with that. Again, I don't use them. Video motion, this is, again, something I've used for some fun videos, not much for screencasting. But if I go and I add an action here, and I say turn everything around, whatever. So now on that video action, let's go ahead with the sound, just get rid of it. So I'm going to mute it. And so with this video action, it rotates around for whatever reason. For some reason I want that. I can go and click on this video action, come over to this video motion and say, I want to have an effect of a spring. And we could change the duration of that. We could change different other things with it. There's spring, there's pulse, there's gravity, and that just changes the look of it. It makes it where it's not just a regular smooth one. It bounces, and that one's too much. That would drive me crazy. But you get the idea. You can do all sorts of different things with it there. Preview that. It makes me want to be sick. But I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. I don't need that animation on it at all. I can, if I go back over to my video actions and I add one, I can set them for curve type. Do I want it to be linear, ease in, ease out, etc. So they do have it, the speed that it will happen at. The linear used to not work. I sent in a bug report on that, and they fixed it. And apparently I was the only one who sent it in, and they still fixed it for me, which was nice. At least the only one they told me about. They may have had others. Mouse pointers, we've seen that, and the keystrokes. And touch callout. This is if I'm recording an iOS device, and I don't use this that often. But I could go ahead and add an action right here and maybe have it where I want to show a pinch action. So I have two fingers for a pinch action, but they should be a little bit further apart to start off with because I'm going to be pinching in. And let's make them just 100 pixels. That's all I want them to be, 100 pixels. And it will have an end state. And at that end state, I want it to maybe wait 0.5 seconds before starting. I could again set the type curve. How does it work? Let's do ease in, so it speeds up, starts off slow, and animate the states to the end. It's still going to be 100 pixels, but their spacing will be closer. So there we go. That's a pinch action right there. Can I drag those down? Can I drag these up? There, I could have it where they are together. And I could show the states in between. Now, when I go to play this, oh, let's go get out of the action itself so it's not showing. This is what it would look like on the final video. It's going to be a very slow pinch. And I probably should have had it just stay at the end. There's more options in there. So I don't use that a whole lot. But you can do that just to show touch stuff. You can have annotations. They don't have a whole lot. I usually would bring in a PNG, but I could go ahead and draw an arrow. And there it is, and change the thickness. If I wanted to, put a shadow on it and put an outline on it. Change the endpoints if I wanted that to be a circle at the end. I usually just use a straight arrow. One really nice thing about this is, say I'm working on a project, and I have in the project, I'm working with Photoshop, and I'm working with web tools, and I'm working with all sorts of things, different programs, and I want this color to be the same. I'm using that same arrow. I can go and click my color, and here I have just a real basic color selection. Pick whatever color I want. They have a more complex color selection here. Right here. There we go. I can change the opacity of it also. I could do RGB, or I could do CMYK, or I could do hue, saturation, brightness, HSB. This is just even a plain grayscale if I just want it to be gray, all sorts of stuff. I can use a spectrum selector. I could use common color wheel schemes. These are ones I think I added. Yeah, that's why they're sort of funky shaped, but I could add those if I wanted to. The spectrum is the default. There's the crayon selector. They still call it the crayon selector, even though those are pencils. Oh my goodness. And these are ones that I've added, so if I wanted to, I can then get whichever color and copy with declaration, or just copy the color, and I can do that in pretty much any of these formats, any common web ones. It'll even do the RGBA if it's down to a different percent, if it's not 100%. But if I wanted this to be the same color as I'm using someplace else, maybe it's this color, that particular shade of red. Maybe I've already figured out that, let's see if we go to this one, it shows that that's the exact color in HTML. And I've been using that. I've saved it here, and I can use that in this video. And yes, when you save it and then you export it and you upload it to YouTube, it might change just slightly because that's just the way videos work when you're using the compression and the codecs and stuff. So it might not match perfectly by the time it goes through the whole process, but it matches very, very well. And if I'm using different tools, whatever color it is, I can have it match. I can have it match. And that's a really powerful thing. This right here is available. This is not a ScreenFlow color selector. This is built into the operating system. So that's another area where it could be handy to have that even within recording Linux. If I'm using other stuff, which for online I don't, for the use in Cola I don't, but for other places I certainly might. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And the last, well, two more things. There's text, which I could go ahead and add text and move that around. This works just like a video clip, so I could resize it and rotate it and do all of that stuff with it. But I could also in the text change, of course, font and size and centering, bold facing. If I have it selected, I can boldface it. It's not letting me boldface it. I don't know why. Could be the font. Does the font not allow it? I don't know why. That's actually a little odd. Oh, there we go. So it might be certain fonts I can, certain fonts I can't. I don't know. Change the fill color. Again, it's going to be that same color selector. So if I'm having matching stuff, which I'm doing in Photoshop also, or even, actually I don't think GIMP uses the Mac color selector. But whatever, I could go ahead, outline the text, put margins around it, and do that. So that's pretty cool. And the last thing is the media browser, media library. It brought in our video recording. It brought in our sound. I could show those in different ways, and I could look at ones that are, not being used. If there were things not being used, I could remove unused media, all sorts of options there. I could also, if I click on this, I can get stuff from Photo Booth, which is kind of like a photo booth you might find in a mall, just a fun little program where you can take pictures of yourself. I never use it. My kids do. I know lots of other people who do. I could use GarageBand music. I could use things from iTunes. I could use things from photos. I could use all sorts of stuff and just grab it. Even with my photos, I can go into the way it's organized in photos and get my moments, my collections, my years, my places, my albums, all sorts of things like that. So it makes it really, really handy. In iTunes, I could do my music, my videos, whatever organization I want right there. And I'm going to probably find a way of graying some of that out because I'm trolled enough. I don't need people knowing anything about my private life or seeing people in my life. But all sorts of things right there. So it makes it real easy to grab this. And of course, I can hit Add Media, and I can go to whichever folder it's on. I can also drag this over. And if I wanted to, I don't have any media. Here we go. Let's just go and take a screenshot. Shift Apple 4. And quick screenshot. There we go. I could drag this in right there.